So you bought your first go-kart. Now, as long as it isn't riddled with sadness and you didn't just buy something resembling a twisted wreckage that somebody's dragged off a dystopian wasteland, you're going to be pretty pumped and excited to finally hit the track and test that bad boy out. Well, that day is today, because in this video, we're taking you karting noobs through your very first actual practice day in your very first actual go-kart. So hopefully you've remembered to actually join your local kart club and you've sorted out your racing license and registration. You've packed your race gear all up and your helmet. You've got your tools and your fuel's all mixed and ready to go, because mixing two-stroke fuel at the track is just a silly, silly waste of time. And you've bought yourself a trailer, or you've scummed one off your mate. So now that you're here at the track and you've had just about enough of your mate's shitty taste of music in the car ride, let's get one thing crystal clear. This is not F1 qualifying. This isn't even a real practice day. This is going to be one of the first, if not the first time that you've sat in a proper go-kart and turned some laps. So put all those aspirations of breaking the track record, just put them away in the toolbox for now. Everyone, meet Dex. Today is Dex's first time in a real go-kart, isn't it, Dex? And like Dex, you noobs should be using this very first session, say 5 to 10 laps or so, just to get a feel for the kart. How does it grip? How does it steer? What do the brakes feel like? And so on. How does it accelerate? And of course, this is your chance to give the kart a really good shakedown to make sure everything works properly. You know, just basic stuff like, is it pulling to one side? Do the brakes work? Is anything falling off? Any weird vibrations? Stuff like that. So at this point, seeing as though this is just really a day to kind of get your eye in and sharpen your reflexes up a bit, just run with a pretty standard neutral setup. Don't go out there with any extreme camber or caster or anything like that. Nothing crazy, just pretty sort of neutral. You should be able to find fairly neutral kart setup recommendations online from your kart manufacturer. All right, so once you've made those adjustments and you've dialed in that neutral setup, we're finally going to go over the kart for a quick health check. Look, it's a good habit to get into before each session to just check everything over. Things break, things can come loose. I'd rather discover that here on the trolley in the pits than come steaming into turn one with a squishy feeling in the brake pedal, followed by a squishy feeling in my jocks. If you're too lazy to do that, then that's on you. Just don't come crying to me when this happens. So starting at the front end, check the nose cone is on properly and that these clamps here aren't all like floppy and loose. Check the pedals all return properly and the pedal stops are secure and correctly adjusted, and make sure the brake rod and the throttle cable are secure. Give the fuel tank a wiggle and also inspect the tie rods, making sure the adjusting nuts are nipped up. There's a little bit of play so they can move freely when you're turning, and make sure that they haven't been bent by some clumsy clot standing on them. The data logger battery will of course need changing occasionally, and check that the engine's battery is charged and secured tight. Most of the nuts on a go-kart are nylon lock nuts or nylock nuts, but just check them all once in a while. I once had a seat come loose during a race, wasn't the best time ever. Brake pads, well, they last for ages, but it doesn't hurt to look at them occasionally. Onto the rear end. Check these bolts here are tight and that the hubs are secure on the axle, because it's much more fun racing with all of your wheels. Likewise, check all the wheel nuts. Next, make sure these axle grub screws are tight. If not, the axle can shift in the bearings and slide sideways when you're cornering. Don't get there and like crank the absolute crap out of them. Just nip them up tight, put some Loctite on there first, and just make sure they're tight. If you do them up too tight, you're going to gouge a big dent in your axle and burr it up. It's going to be a nightmare to get out. So just nip them up tight, kind of like a spark plug, and then after you've come in from your next session, just make sure they haven't come loose. Because the problem is, if your axle grub screws come loose, and if you're going around a high-speed corner, loading up the side, you know, the horizontal axis of your go-kart, and the axle slides in the bearings because the grub screws have come loose, it throws the chain off. That's going to make a hell of a mess around your chain area. Check the sprocket is tight on the carrier and that the sprocket carrier itself is tightened onto the axle and lined up correctly to the front sprocket. Then have a look to make sure the chain tension's good, and this is too loose. Chain tension also involves a check of the engine mount bolts. These are the clamps that hold the mounting block to the chassis, and these two here are for the mounting block, which is also the sliding part for putting tension on the chain. As for the engine itself, well, they're all a bit different, but as long as it isn't pissing fuel or cooling out everywhere, it should be pretty obvious if the radiator is just hanging there flapping in the breeze, or if the airbox is falling off. Rightio, this is Dex. Dex is pumped, he's ready to rock, he's got his gear on, his rib protector, his helmet, and he's going to put his gloves on last. Try putting your helmet on and doing it up with your gloves on if you want to know why. Go Dex. All right, session 1. On your outlap, you'll need to get some heat in your tyres and engine if you haven't warmed it up already on the trolley. So for the first lap around, just do some weaving side to side to get the tyres nice and sticky, and some alternating throttle brake pedal pushes to get the brakes working and engine warm. Once you feel some grip through the steering, it's time to start concentrating. Start slowly and just ease into it. You've most likely driven rental karts before, but this is a proper racing kart with much more power and grip, especially if you're jumping straight into a two-stroke. Just familiarise yourself with how the kart feels underneath you, how direct the steering feels, the bumps, the brakes, the acceleration, and the overall dynamics of the whole package. You might find it pretty mentally overstimulating depending on your age or experience, so that's probably enough to think about for your very first ever drive. So drive around for about 10 laps or so and then come in for a break. Have a chat with your karting buddy and ask whatever questions you have and listen to any little pointers they give you. Have a snack, have a drink. Session 2. Now that you've familiarised yourself with the go-kart and its basic dynamics, for your second session you can now just start to gradually build your speed. Really now, just focus on picking out the racing line and getting an idea of where you need to place the kart on the track. Use the brakes and where you can get away with just backing off the throttle a bit, yet still make the corner. Also, try and stretch out the engine to the full revs down the straights. Try and get some consistency in your laps, even if they're slow. Consistency is king. Again, bang in about 10 laps and then come in for a breather, a quick debrief and a drink. Session 3. The next 10 laps, you can just continue as you did in the second session and work on consistency, or you can begin to now be a little more precise with your braking points and really nailing them. Be mindful of always looking ahead to your next position on the track, whether it's looking through the apex to the exit point or eyeballing the braking zone of a hairpin from back in the beginning of the straight. If you're feeling comfy, start to push a little. Be brave. Don't stress if you overdo it, burn the toast and have a spin or something. That's just part of the learning curve. We've all done it many times. This is all going to dial in your sense of speed, sharpen up your reflexes and reaction times, and help you to keep relaxed in the kart. Come in after your 10 laps and let it sink in. You'll be doing this a lot, so there's no rush. Relax, take your time. There's no substitute for time in the seat. Okay, so that's 3 good sessions as an introduction to driving your go-kart. If you're still feeling fresh, go out for another session and fine-tune your lines and maybe start looking at your braking points a bit more. Start paying some attention to your lap times as well, just to see how far off the average pace you are. All right, so once you're done, clean everything off and check the kart over. You're going to be itching to get back in the saddle for your next practice day when you'll be ready to actually begin your journey of chasing real pace. Now, if your kart's all cleaned off now, it's ready to go for the next time. Just pull it out of the trailer, jump in and go. That next practice day will be the first of countless trips of the track where you'll be working on specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-bound aspects of your driving skills and kart setup knowledge. For tips on efficient ways to do that, keep an eye out for my upcoming videos or just click the bloody subscribe button and punt the like button off the track. Seriously, that's how you tell the algorithm to show my videos in your feed. Anyway, we're going to go home now. Catch ya. I'm choosing the music on the way home too.